another Screamfish One-on-One. I'm thrilled today to be speaking with Sascha Just, the director of Ellis, the documentary on Ellis Marsalis. Sasha, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me. I really do appreciate it.
I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
I'm really excited about this conversation. The film is wonderful,
Thank you. Thank you.
and it's just like what I love about the film is that it's about more than one man's contribution. It's about his interaction with the world, and I want to talk a little bit about that later. But first of all, I mean, just wondering how you came into contact with Ellis. How did this film begin?
This is actually it's fun. Oops, my chair. It's funny how that happened. I was in New Orleans a few years after hurricane, not fairly shortly after Hurricane Katrina, because I wanted to see how the music scene was doing after all the destruction, because I had heard lots of terrible things. And to backtrack, I mean, I came to this country to make films about music, and so I came to New York for that reason. And so then going to New Orleans, where the cradle of jazz, was so natural in a sense. And then when Katrina happened, I thought, oh my God, I really want to see what's happening for musicians. And I was interviewing a musician on Frenchman Street in front of a cafe, Rose Nicole, which doesn't exist anymore, sadly. And the owner of the cafe invited me and my little team to a party that they had and started speaking with me. And then he said, talked about the film or the project I was working on at the time. And he said, Sasha, would you like to meet the Marsalises? They're playing next door. and, and then he walked me over and he said with this cute smile, by the way, I'm the uncle. And so so there was Ellis and his son Jason, and that's how it started. And I was immediately very, very interested in Ellis, not only because he was obviously and just an amazing, amazing pianist, composer, everything, but also he just had such a wonderful personality. And I was intrigued by the question of how did he um, bring into the world and so much so many talented people, and how did he spread his knowledge and started so much, and remain so modest. That combination was very intriguing to me.
Well, and there's a huge impact that he has, not just on the music scene, but as you said, on so many. I'm wondering from your time with him, what did you discover? What do you think his legacy truly is?
It's so hard to put into words, but I would say what I find, I mean, first of all, he was someone who really had a very generous spirit and believed in passing on knowledge and education. So, and the education was, there was so much dignity in the way he approached it. But I think what most people who I've spoken to and what I've gotten from him, in addition to the sense of humor and this realistic sense of human nature, he had a way of making people learn for themselves. So everybody told me who has ever studied with him or played with him, and he would always bring it back to the other person, saying, what do you think, what do you hear? So the Socratic interaction with people and the world, I think, was just extremely influential. And he set a standard of excellence and how to conduct yourself, how to pursue your work. And for me personally, to never give up, keep on keeping on. That's the saying. And he was really someone who had a lot of odds against him, and he kept on going. And I think he was a role model for that reason alone.
Wow. Yes, absolutely. And you talk about keep on keeping on. One of the things that strikes me about this film is that so much. Well, and your interest is in telling stories about music. So much of jazz, as we see here in the film, is designed to tell a story. And I was just wondering, from your perspective, what do you think it means for music to tell a story, to communicate the life of the musicians and those of a culture?
Oof. loaded question. I'm not a musician, so
Right,
I
right,
can
of
very
course.
easily say something that's completely where musicians will say, "Well, that doesn't work." But I can only say from my experiencing the music, I feel that the mood and the melodies carry certain messages or feelings, and that's the way I try to use them in the film. That when I would look for music that would express something that Ellis said, or that, yeah, that basically the mood that would feel fit the mood of what he was speaking about. And what I noticed in the music is in his music, it's rarely just actually never just one note. There's always a complexity even in the emotions, and I think that's what made it very special. But I'm not sure if I'm really answering your question, because I have the feeling you're asking more about like a larger picture of culture here, right?
Well, that was one of the questions, sort of, yes, but I mean, absolutely, you answered it beautifully. Um, and because there is this is a film very much that connects music and history. And we hear Ellis's story. We hear conversation about ends in Katrina, but goes through segregation and all of these conversations. And yet the music is constantly evolving in the midst of these moments in time.
Hmm. I
Um,
see what you mean. Yeah, I mean, to me, that is really um, the idea of that Ellis was, of course, very influenced by everything that was going on. So he talked a lot about the segregation. It just came up, right? So, and the limits that came with it, but also about just the idea of pursuing what he felt was right and what felt good to him. And so um how can I say this best? he, so he wouldn't be swayed from his way of what he thought was right, and he was influenced by a lot of different musics, but he also really knew what he wanted. And one of the things is that he did is he was in love with bebop. That's how he started out, right? So but he would take in all these influences, and I think in the course of his life, the more he wrote, the more he played, he would incorporate them. And I'm not sure if he directly reacted to any of the historic events that we're talking about, but it feels that way with
yeah,
the music. And that's my subjective perspective, but
of course.
that's
Well, of course, yes, absolutely. And yeah, what you're saying there is true. Well, I mean, here's something too. As a filmmaker, speaking to you as a filmmaker, one of the things that is brought up within the film, um, it sort of speaks to the idea of creativity on a broad scale as well. Forgive me, I can't remember the name of the actor, but he makes a comment saying when he's sitting with Ellis in the midst of all these musicians, and he says, "Don't think you're not doing what they're doing." Um, and I was just wondering, as a filmmaker, how you react to a statement like that. What does that mean to you? Because I mean, this is a very like, this is a film that takes that moment of music and sort of blows it up into the arts in general in that one moment.
You say this so nicely, thank you. You're referring to the interview with the great, wonderful Wendell Pierce.
Yes, yes,
Yes, and I love his interview because he really speaks about exactly what you're just saying, and the meaning how the music held for not just musicians but also for people who were absorbing it, and that would be an expression of personal identity, dignity, and freedom. And also for him as an actor, of course, that his art would matter the same way. And for me as a filmmaker, I saw myself as responding to the music, responding to Ellis, and also seeing my film making a contribution to that larger culture in my own way. And Yeah, like, it's sort of, I would say the same thing what Ellis said to Wendell. I would hope he would say to me, don't think that you're not doing this, you're doing it as well. That would be my hope. We didn't get to say, I didn't get to ask him, but that's what I would hope that he would say. But I do think that I mean, one of the goals was certainly to place the music in a larger context and to highlight or emphasize how important it is for our culture, and that it has influenced really everything and in ways that we're not even aware of. And that musicians like Ellis foremost, in my opinion, but musicians like Ellis have had an enormous impact on our lives and contributed enormously. And it's often the ones who are modest who don't even, we don't even, who make the greatest impact.
Just that's a great word. I love that you said that. I was wondering from your perspective, what is truly the impact that Ellis has had? I mean, you said we've talked about him passing, teaching others, but I mean, there's so much seems to have changed through him, and I think it's his now. Of course, his son is talking about as well about his meeting his mom, but he says, if he goes to New York instead of New Orleans, the history of the music industry changes. So I'm wondering, what impact do you think he most had?
I mean, that on that point, I think that Jason Marsalis was talking very much about if this family hadn't come to
Yeah,
be, then Branford and Winton wouldn't have become the amazing musicians that they are. They wouldn't have
yeah,
existed, and then they couldn't have gone to New York and really changed the music, the jazz scene that is out there, or music scene. I shouldn't even limit it to jazz, and that was certainly one very concrete impact he had. And then he has other sons. He has Jason and Delphio, who have made enormous contributions to the music, and as musicians and composers, and then also as teachers. All of them have taught the music. And if you look at what Winton's doing with Jazz at Lincoln Center and the educational programs and going out into the world, I mean, it makes it really I mean, it has this global approach to music. So I think without Ellis, that none of this would have been possible. And I also think there is a approach of taking jazz and saying it's great in clubs, but it is also wonderful in concert halls. There is really no difference between European classical music and jazz. It's all music, and it's wonderful music. It's complex music. You can't put a limiting cliche on it or anything, a stereotype to it.
yeah. Well, that was something else I was interested in too, is just from your perspective, and I don't know what your relationship. I mean, certainly your relationship to music, but I mean this relationship to jazz, because jazz is its own unique thing. Just wondering for you, what's the power of jazz?
That's really hard to put into words because I love it so much. When you love something, it's very hard to put into words. For me, it has a lot to do with there's this feeling of freedom to it and the complexity, and then the rhythm takes me along, and I really love the improvisational parts that I can see. There's one person out of a group who brings up his own feelings and ideas, and then the group supports him, and then he joins the group again. And so I feel this democratic sense of interacting and the spontaneity that goes with it. But it's not just spontaneous. I mean, there's so much more that goes into it in terms of music knowledge that comes out to these improvisations, impresses me enormously.
Yeah.
I mean, and it just, yeah, it's just a great feeling. And I love this music since I was very young. So it's just hit me at some point, and then I was addicted to it.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, there's definitely a beauty to it, and the like. I love that you talk. It's almost like a community, and but a different type. It's not as structured. It's so open. I love that. Thank you for that. Just as we start to wrap up, Sasha, I'm just wondering, what is it that you hope people take away from the film of their time with Ellis?
Of that time with Ellis, well, first of all, that what a wonderful and complex person he was, that he was part of this larger historical development, and one of the last people to really be able to speak on that. So about the segregation issues and desegregation and all these changes this country has gone through. So that he's really sort of he's an oral historian on that, and that it is of crucial importance to value and to cherish and preserve those histories. And for him personally, that I think he and his music will live on. And I hope that the film contributes to spreading, to sort of disseminating his legacy to the world.
I appreciate that. I really do. I know the film is playing at New York,
DOC
New York
NYC, we
Doc
have a
NYC.
world premiere on Thursday, November 10th, and on Friday, November 11th, we have a second screening, and on Thursday, I mean, on both evening screenings, we have a Q&A, and on Thursday, I'm so happy to say that Wynton Marsalis is coming to join the Q&A. Yay.
Oh wow, that's exciting. That's wonderful.
Yeah, and so Jason Marsalis is coming as well, and I shouldn't say it's just as exciting to me, but I just wanted to mention both.
Oh, I think that's great. That's very exciting. Thank you so much for the time. I really do appreciate it. I
Thank
definitely wish you
you.
the best.
Thank you so much. It was wonderful meeting you. Take
Wonderful
care.
meeting you. Thanks. Bye bye.
Bye.
Don't worry, my